He never heard the dagger slide up through the stink-shrouded latrine, only felt the sudden bloom of heat beneath his ribs, an inner sunrise where no light should live. A heartbeat earlier, King Edmund Ironside of England had been busy grunting curses at the hardened stool that refused to leave his war-ravaged body. Now blood spattered the oak privy seat in crimson constellations, each droplet spelling treachery in a language older than runes. Outside, Winchester's dawn bells rang for All Saints' Day, oblivious that they were tolling a monarch's final prayer, offered mid-defecation. It was November 30th, 1016, and the young king, barely 26, yet already stitched together by battle scars, had chosen this drafty outhouse precisely because the damp fog masked the smell of siege meat spoiling in the kitchens. 2 months earlier he'd fought Cnut the Dane to a stalemate at Asandon. The treaty ink was still drying on parchment when dysentery struck Edmund's camp like a second invasion. Warriors who had survived axe and spear now huddled over chamber pots, groaning as though hell itself gnawed their intestines. The royal physician prescribed boiled nettles and a firm sit to expel the sickness. No one imagined that privy would become a throne of murder. They called him Ironside for the way he wedged his shield against Viking blows, but iron turns brittle in winter. As Edmund strained, steam curled from the pit beneath, rotted straw, rotting hopes, while his retainers loitered 10 paces away, trading gossip about whose lands the king might confiscate next. Only one man dared stand closer, Eadric Streona, the alderman whose loyalty shifted quicker than a maggot changes meat. Shivering in wolf fur, Eadric feigned concern each time the king groaned, yet his eyes flicked toward the outhouse floorboards, toward the assassin he'd hidden there like a splinter in England's heart. The killer's name was rumored to be Lufa, a Mercian cutpurse whose specialty was getting under people's skin, literally. He'd spent the night submerged in the privy pit, nostrils packed with goose grease to dull the stench, hand wrapped around the dagger's hilt. Hours passed, and every drip of waste became a drumbeat counting down to Regicide. When Edmund finally shuffled in, trousers half-laced, Lufa steadied his aim at a knothole beneath the seat, no thicker than a thumb, yet perfectly aligned with soft flesh. All he needed was a grunt loud enough to hide the scrape of steel. That grunt came now, reverberating through cedar walls like thunder trapped in a coffin. Lufa thrust upward. The blade punched bowel, then spleen, before lodging beneath the breastbone. Edmund's gasp whistled through the chilled air, a sound too brief for screams, too raw for words. His crownless head slammed the wooden panel, scattering cobwebs. Outside, Eadric called, "Majesty? Do you require aid?" The question edged with mockery sharper than any knife. He signaled 2 guards, faces hidden in helm shadows, to force the door. What they discovered next shocked even hardened warriors. England's champion slumped over his own filth, eyes bulging at the absurdity of dying where only kings' bowels dared go. One guard retched, the other crossed himself. Eadric, ever the actor, fell to his knees, cradling Edmund's blood-slick hand. "Poison," he cried for the onlookers gathering like flies. "The Danes have struck again," but whispers sprouted quicker than weeds. A blade left a different stain than foul brew, and Eadric's tears looked suspiciously staged. Edmund tried to speak, perhaps to name his killer, perhaps to command a final charge, but only bubbles formed at his lips, each one bursting with a copper tang. Memory flickered, the clang of swords at Ashington Hill, the salted kiss of his Queen Eldgith, the weight of the crown balanced against England's fracturing peace. He had feared dying in bed like weak kings, never imagining a latrine would be his battlefield, his intestines the enemy's spoils. As life seeped out, the privy walls seemed to close in, boards groaning under the secret they now kept. Outside, a crow cawed, black wings carving the fog, a scavenger herald for the shift of power already underway. For Eadric's accomplice had unlatched a side door, slipping into the mist with a purse heavy in one hand and Edmund's dignity in the other, leaving behind a nation about to be devoured by Cnut's tide. Eadric rose, wiping faux tears, and barked orders to cloak the scene. "Carry him to his chambers." No soul speaks of this. Yet rumors, like sewage, follow gravity. They flowed downward to taverns, sideways through monasteries, upward into future centuries where scribes would squint at parchments and debate whether a king stabbed on the toilet deserved a heroic saga or a cautionary fart joke. And still the bells of Winchester rang, oblivious idols clanging for salvation as England's Ironside cooled on cedar slats, pants around knees, crown forever tilted toward ignominy. The royal corpse was still warm when Eadric's scheme began to unravel like a badly spun tapestry. As 6 huskarls lifted Edmund from the blood-slick seat, one noticed something glinting beneath the plank, an iron sliver no bigger than a blacksmith's fingernail, smeared in a viscous mixture of feces and fresh red. He pinched it with thumb and forefinger, drew it into dawn light, and blanched. A dagger tip. Steel, not poison. And where a tip lay, a blade had surely followed. Eadric's voice cracked like frost underfoot. Throw that filth away before it infects you. But the huskarl, a scar-faced veteran named Godric, had served Edmund since the prince's first raid against the Welsh. Loyalty hardened in war does not soften in latrine stench. Godric tucked the shard into a leather pouch and muttered a prayer that sounded suspiciously like an oath of vengeance. Inside Winchester's royal hall the body was laid on a trestle table draped with wolf pelts. Physicians bustled, pretending a dead king still required diagnosis. One pried open the wound, released a gush of half-clotted gore and frowned. A thrust from below, he declared. Blade entered upward, trajectory unfit for self-harm. Candles guttered in the draught, flickering over nobles whose faces contorted between horror and calculation. If Edmund had been murdered, treaties with the Danes were parchment ashes in a hearth none dared tend. Eadric licked dry lips. He strained too hard, he insisted. The bowel burst. Internal ruin sometimes mimics steel. But the chamber's hush answered louder than any accusation. The alderman could almost hear the gears of suspicion clicking into place. Queen Eldgith arrived, hair streaming loose, a sign of widowhood and war. She pressed 2 fingers to Edmund's neck, though pulse had long fled, then lifted blood-spotted skirts and knelt beside the trestle. Her voice came flint-sharp. I want every floorboard of that privy torn up. Find the missing dagger. Those words, like a royal decree, made the room's torchlight seem suddenly harsher. Beneath Winchester's wells and warrens, Lufas stumbled through drainage tunnels, ankle-deep in runoff that steamed against dawn's chill. Goosegrease was failing, Bal rose with each breath. He clutched the dagger's broken hilt. Steel snapped on Edmund's rib, and cursed Eadric for promising an easy exit. Above, church bells still pealed. Their notes chased him like wolves, each clang a reminder that the bounty in his purse could not drown the memory of a king's death rattle or the reek that clung to his own skin. He lurched toward a ladder leading into the meat market, unaware that Godric and 3 grim huskarls already sifted privy muck overhead, axes hungry for scapegoat flesh. Meanwhile, Cnut the Dane camped on the Thames estuary, mulling news delivered by a breathless rider. Edmund is dead. England weeps. The Viking prince smiled, icy and wide. Yet even conquerors know caution, he asked first. How? The messenger swallowed. Some say fever. Others, his gaze dropped to the mud. A dagger in the privy. Laughter erupted among Cnut's jarls, boisterous, scornful, until Cnut raised a hand. Men who kill on dung heaps often sink into the same. He paced the frost-bitten turf, mind hammering out strategy. With Edmund gone, the Witan would name a new sovereign before the week's end, either Cnut by treaty or some Saxon upstart by pride. The difference, he decided, would be measured in rivers of blood or in the ink of swift diplomacy. Back in Winchester, torchlight rippled through the outhouse, now roofless from Godric's fury. He wrenched the final plank free, and found the assassin's crawlspace, cramped, slime-coated, stinking of fear. On a shelf just inside lay a purse embroidered with the crest of Mercia, Eadric Streona's wolf banner devouring a lamb. Inside clinked silver pennies, freshly minted. Proof enough. Godric thundered into the hall, flung the purse onto Eadric's silk-trimmed boots, and roared, "Your coin paid for a king's guts." Gasps skittered across rafters. Eadric stepped back, hand drifting to his belt knife, but too many fists closed around sword grips. Even grief-struck nobles relish swift justice when guilt drips silver. Eldgith's eyes glittered, tears burned away by fury. "Seize him," she whispered. 2 huskarls shoved Eadric to his knees, binding wrists with Edmund's own ceremonial belt, a poetic knot that made the queen's mouth twist into something almost like a smile. Eadric screamed treachery, claimed the purse planted, swore Edmund had died a natural death unfit for minstrel's jest. But when Godric presented the blade tip, the hall erupted in a roar that shook icicles from eaves. In less than an hour, the alderman's head swung from the same yardarm, where thieves' corpses dangled, his entrails fed to castle hounds, ironically completing the digestive saga that had begun beneath the king's privy seat. Yet even vengeance fails to stanch power vacuums. The Witan convened under storm-dark skies, ravens wheeling overhead as though scenting fresh monarchy. Some elders urged crowning Edmund's infant sons despite their soft skulls and softer claims. Others, weary of war, argued to honor the treaty, accept Cnut and spare England another winter of corpse fires and barren fields. When thunder cracked like God's own gavel, the council chose survival over sentiment. Messengers galloped north with olive branches made of iron. England would have a Dane king. Ealdgyth wept not for the decision, but for the inevitability. She had foreseen the moment Edmund's blood speckled her bodice. Still she gathered her children, kissed their brows, and whispered, "Steel may break iron, but honor outlives both." She hid the knitting of conspiracy behind mother-soft eyes, vowing someday to tell princes why their father smelled of privy rot when laid in earth, but tasted of legend when sung by firesides. And so, under a moon the color of old bone, Edmund Ironside was interred at Glastonbury beside kings who had died clean in battle or warm in bed. Monks chanted psalms, but rumors flitted through stone arches, winged as bats. "Did you hear? A king bled out on his own dung." Some laughed, others crossed themselves, fearing such a fate might steal dignity from all mankind. But chroniclers sharpened quills, for scandal is sweeter than sanctity, and by dawn the tale inked itself across parchment, a warning that even Ironsides cannot shield a foolish rear. Outside the abbey, wind combed long grass, scattering the first frost like shattered glass. Somewhere beneath Winchester, Lufa still crawled, hunted by the ghosts of both sovereign and betrayer, while above him, new banners unfurled to winter's breath. Cnut's raven, black wings spread against England's uncertain sky. And in the hush between candle flickers, a single question lingered, so foul, so human, so impossible to ignore. If even a king can't control when and where his bowels betray him, what hope has any soul of dying with grace? The winter that crowned Cnut also froze the river Itchen thick enough for wagons to rumble across its glassy spine, carrying fresh taxes toward Danish coffers. Villagers huddled in smoke-choked huts, trading new jokes about the privy king for stale loaves of barley bread, while bards with sharper tongues than pay pouches spun Edmund's latrine murder into ballads sold by the verse. He sat for relief but found only grief. The blade rose up like a thief. The refrain stuck in children's heads like burrs, and by Candlemas even monks caught themselves humming it while illuminating manuscripts meant for prayer. Yet not all laughter came easy. Each time a noble excused himself from a banquet, nervous glances tracked his steps, as though the rushlight corridors themselves might sprout knives. Castle latrines, once humble wooden boxes perched over cesspits, suddenly bristled with iron plating and torch sconces. Carpenters earned windfalls reinforcing privy seats with oak thick enough to host a siege. One enterprising smith forged a commode lid ringed in spikes to discourage lurking foes. Queen Ealdgyth ordered 2 for her children's chambers and slept marginally better. But vengeance, like sewage, seeks the lowest outlet. Godric's huskarls scoured every alehouse and fish market, flashing the broken dagger tip as if it were a hellhound's tooth. Weeks passed, tracks iced over, and most assumed Lufa, the ghost of the pit, had slipped into Normandy or drowned in some bog too lazy to spit him back. Yet rumors whispered of a ragged man spending silver pennies stamped with Mercian wolves, hiding his face behind rag-soaked vinegar to mask an odor no bath could scrub. The scent of rot doesn't forget its host. One sleet-slick dawn, Godric and 3 riders found that man outside a roadside shrine near Stonehenge, kneeling before weather-worn stones as if seeking pardon from gods so old they predated kings and latrines. His cloak, once sable, now hung in tatters, frost-limbed every strand of his beard. At the clatter of hooves he spun, dagger hilt glinting, the same one missing its murderous tip. Steel flashed, snow hissed. The fight lasted less than 10 breaths. Lufa, weakened by weeks of exposure and guilt that gnawed like tapeworms, managed a single slash across Godric's forearm before an axe haft broke his wrist. He collapsed, shrieking, the stench of goose grease blooming anew. When Godric pressed a boot to the assassin's chest, Lufa spat bloody phlegm and rasped, "A king dies as he lives, full of shit." The huskarl's answer was wordless. He forced the broken dagger into Lufa's own beltline, then left him bleeding beneath the monoliths, a sacrifice to both justice and ancient stone. No songs would eulogize the pit lurker, no parchment would note the exact hour his gurgling ceased. Even carrion crows, affronted by the smell, waited a prudent distance before feasting. News of the capture rode on wind to Winchester, reaching Queen Ealdgyth as she prepared her sons for exile to a monastery in Ely. She listened, lips tight, then handed Godric a purse heavier than gratitude. Give him burial enough that mildew not follow his bones into our legends, she commanded, surprising herself with the mercy. Godric merely nodded. Warriors understand that some ghosts are louder dead than alive. But louder still was the shift in Cnut's court. The Dane king, keen to legitimize his throne, married Eldgith within the year, rebranding her as Elfjafu, gift of the elves. The union braided conquest with caution. Saxon nobles grumbled yet accepted, choosing warm hearths over frozen rebellion. At their wedding feast, served in the same hall where Edmund's body had cooled, Cnut raised a mead horn and announced, "Let no man call me usurper. I inherit not through murder, but through marriage and mercy." No one mentioned the privy. Yet when servants removed the trenchers, Cnut beckoned Godric. "The blade that felled Ironside, bring it." The huskarl produced both halves, clean but still etched with rust the color of dried liver. Cnut set them on the high table, one before him, one before Queen Elfjafu. "England sits on twin edges," he declared, voice echoing against rafters. "Let us wield them as plowshares, not daggers." Applause rippled, but Godric caught the queen's flicker of disdain. She knew plowshares sometimes turned back to swords when soil refused to obey. Still, she lifted her shard and touched it to Cnut's like a toast. The clang rang thin, uneasy, yet somehow final. Years later, pilgrims passing Glastonbury Abbey claimed grass grew taller where Edmund lay, green blades twining up from soil rich with paradox. A warrior king felled not on field but on seat. A reign ended by the most undignified ambush in Christendom. Monks harvested that grass, wove it into votive mats, and sold them to travelers seeking protection from indigestion and betrayal. Superstition, perhaps, yet even abbots admitted the fateful logic. Keep your bowels honest and your friends closer. In smoky longhouses from Jorvik to Wessex, grandparents warned giggling grandchildren to mind the Ironside lesson. Never drop your guard while dropping your breeches. Some kids swore they saw Edmund's ghost on misty mornings, stalking outhouses with spectral sword drawn, searching for the honor he lost to a dagger and a privy pit. Others insisted the real spirit was Eadric's severed head, mouthing half-formed apologies each time a chamber pot splashed too loudly. But the land itself had already chosen its punchline. Every time thunder rolled across chalk hills, shepherds nodded toward dark clouds and muttered, "There goes King Edmund, still trying to finish his business." History professors in distant centuries would quibble over details. Was the assassin truly hiding beneath, or did Eadric strike from behind? Did Edmund collapse immediately, or crawl 3 paces clutching entrails? The debate proved irresistible because it married the grand with the grotesque, reminding scholars that beneath crowns and chronicles thumped bowels as fragile as any peasants. Yet surviving charters all agreed on one fact. The blade entered from below, as though hell itself had stabbed upward to reclaim a soul that forgot humility. And so Edmund Ironside lives on in the human imagination, not for victories at Asandon or treaties inked under torch smoke, but for a single terrible instant when iron spine met cedar plank and fate rose through filth to pierce a king's softest part. A reminder carved in latrine wood and legend alike. Even the mighty cannot escape the call of nature, or the knife hiding in its echo. 3 winters turned to 20, and the latrine legend ripened like ale left too long in cask, gaining bite, losing subtlety, until even foreign envoys could not enter Winchester without being treated to some bawdy retelling. A traveling jongler named Guy de Carcassonne claimed he'd bought the very oak seat for a pouch of pepper and displayed it at fairs from Rouen to Rome, charging a penny for each pilgrim who dared sit and tempt a phantom blade. When skeptics cried fraud, Guy would flip the plank to show what he swore were flecks of royal blood trapped in the grain. Under torchlight, the reddish knots looked convincingly like congealed shame. The church frowned. Relic trade was their monopoly, after all, yet the story proved harder to silence than a tavern sing-along. Archbishop Wulfstan thundered from the pulpit that God struck Edmund down for haughty confidence in mortal strength, but smaller clergy whispered another sermon. If a king can be undone by his own backside, best all men keep their confessions frequent and their diets light. Lenten fasting grew stricter across Mercia. Fishmongers thanked Edmund with every inflated price. 1077, the Anglo-Norman Chronicle recorded a curious footnote. A monk at Abingdon, pricked by scholarly doubt, sought to verify whether entrails expelled post-mortem matched the volume of a living purge. His grisly experiment on pig carcasses produced no consensus, only the monastery's permanent nickname, Swineside Abbey. Yet his notes, copied centuries later by a Paris surgeon, seeded a medical rumor that death on the privy guaranteed faster corpse decay. Anatomists argued about gases, theologians about sins. Meanwhile, cemeteries discreetly buried chamberpot victims deeper, just in case. Nearly a century after Edmund's fall, King Henry II commissioned poets to forge a unifying English mythos that favored Angevins over Danes or Saxons. One court versifier, Osbert of Clare, attempted to recast Ironside as a tragic martyr betrayed by domestic treason rather than cosmic mockery. His unfinished epic Regis Intestina, the King's Innards, opens with celestial omens and noble speeches, but scribal glosses reveal that audiences laughed at the privy scene no matter how many Latin hexameters clothed it. Osbert abandoned the project. Historians cite it as the first documented case of writer's block caused by toilet humor. The most dramatic twist came in 1184, when an earthquake rattled Glastonbury Abbey and split Edmund's tomb along an old mortar seam. Monks discovered the coffin undisturbed, save for a rusted dagger blade lying across the sternum, pitted but unmistakably missing its tip. How the weapon traveled from Winchester to Somerset no chronicle could, or dared, explain. Some said Godric the Huscarl, before dying childless, had secreted the relic to rest with his king. Others whispered darker tales, that Eldgith herself ordered the burial, binding blade to bone so Edmund would greet Judgment Day with proof of wrong done and right avenged. The monks resealed the coffin and sold tiny splinters of the blade as indulgences against sudden death. Pilgrims queued halfway to Bath, clutching purses and bowels alike. Papal legates sniffed heresy, but English bishops argued that fear of ignoble ends kept sinners humble. Rome, needing Henry's coin for crusades, let the commerce stand. Thus did Edmund's humiliation bankroll both crenellated abbey towers and a few Templar swords destined for Acre. Centuries churned. By the reign of Elizabeth I, London playhouses found inexhaustible comedy in kings dropping dead mid-defecation. One lost drama, The Lofty Fall, reportedly featured a jester delivering the line, "Say not the throne is hollow, his grace left proof within." Puritans decried such scatological spectacle, but box office receipts stank of success. Yet while stages roared, scholars quietly pieced together a subtler legacy. Legal clerks cited Edmund's clause when advising monarchs to keep trusted guards within earshot of private chambers. Architects drafted royal privy shafts with escape hatches and murder-proof grates. Even Shakespeare's Hamlet, pondering how a king may go through the guts of a beggar, owes a linguistic debt to the gossip that crossed 4 generations of English ears. By the 1600s, balladeers had shortened the saga to a single moral couplet sung in alehouses from Bristol to Berwick. "Hold fast thy sword when nature calls, or fate may strike from privy walls." It took the Enlightenment to nudge Edmund's story from folk cautionary to academic curiosity. In 1732, the antiquarian Sir Randolph Plymley presented to the Royal Society a paper titled Coprological Implications in Regicidal Case Studies, positing that Ironside's death reshaped palace sanitation protocols more than any engineering treatise. His peers choked on snuff, but Plymley's appendix, detailing the first known royal water closet installed at Kensington, proved kings still feared dusty rumors as much as plagues. And the fear echoed onward. During the Blitz of 1940, when Buckingham Palace reinforced its bomb shelters, engineers consulted medieval blueprints to ensure no breach from sewer lines could route saboteurs upward, a 1,000-year echo of Luffa's crawlspace. Classified memos literally labeled the threat Ironside entry. Today, archaeologists at Winchester display a warped cedar board believed to be an offcut from the original privy seat. Carbon dating whispers the right century. Micro-scratches suggest hurried knife strokes. Tourists Instagram selfies beside it, hashtagging #fateful flush. Curators know the artifact's authenticity is maybe 60%, but the admission lines stay long and funding stays generous. Because in the end, the tale's power lives not in surety but in shiver. That skin, crown, and reputation all peel away at the tug of one hidden blade. That dignity wears no armor below the waist. And that history, with its pomp and plinths, still reserves the last laugh for the latrine. And somewhere in the archives of England's National Health Service rests a footnote citing Edmund's event as the primordial case study for ergonomic toilet seat design, proof that even the kingdom's most embarrassing footnote fertilized progress. But the question that troubles late-night historians sipping cold tea is not how Edmund died. It's whether he realized, between shock, pain, and an almost comical disbelief, that his legend would outlive every polished epitaph of braver deaths. Did he sense, in that filthy heartbeat, the peculiar immortality awaiting him? No chronicle answers. Only the echo of All Saints' bells, the sting of cold wood, and a single dagger thrusting up from darkness, turning a king into humanity's eternal reminder that pride can slip quicker than bowels. Steam hissed from the newfangled locomotives of Victorian Britain, but even their iron lungs could not drown the echo of Edmund Ironside's ignominious end. On railway platforms, penny paper vendors hawked sensational sheets like the Weekly Thunderer, whose serialized column, Seats of Infamy, spun lurid yarns about historical fatalities. Issue number 17 featured a woodcut of Edmund with trousers at ankles, mouth frozen in a cartoonish O, dagger protruding upward like an exclamation point no grammar ever needed. The public ate it up, along with fig rolls and gossip about Prince Albert's custom mahogany commode, rumored to have brass grills welded beneath the seat, just in case. Charles Dickens, touring workhouses for household words, jotted in his notebook after a particularly grim latrine inspection. Here is the true equality of man. Each stoops, each suffers, and thus each is vulnerable to the hidden knife, be it poverty or betrayal. He never named Edmund directly, yet the subtext leaked like sewer gas into chapters of Bleak House, where characters fear unseen miasmas rising from drains. Victorians linked filth to disease, and Edmund's fate became a metaphor for the empire's dread that an invisible foe, cholera, revolt, Irish Fenian plots, might stab upward through the underbelly of progress. Parliament's 1858 Great Stink debates even cited the Ironside legend as a cautionary parable. Hansard records one MP thundering, "Let us not be the nation that slays itself upon the privy of neglect." Across the Atlantic, Mark Twain encountered the tale during a London lecture circuit. He riffed on it in an 1873 after-dinner speech. England is a land where even the thrones have thrones, and one unlucky monarch found the lower seat less secure than the upper. Laughter erupted, but Twain's closing line, "Truth is hardly ever dignified," landed with a sobering thud. Newspapers reprinted the quip, and so Edmund crept into American vernacular as shorthand for any colossal embarrassment, from railroad bankruptcies to crooked Tammany Hall deals. By 1910, public health crusaders seized the legend for pamphlets urging proper latrine ventilation in colonial outposts. A Royal Engineers manual distributed to troops in Mesopotamia carried an appendix titled Ironside Precautions, advising soldiers to inspect pits for native saboteur implements before squatting. Most laughed, until a sentry in Basra reported spears hidden beneath a crude barracks latrine. Commanders, recalling Edmund's story, ordered trench boards reinforced with iron mesh. The measure likely prevented no ambushes, but it did keep several vipers from slithering into the camp, a small mercy paid for by an ancient humiliation. World War I trenches turned the cautionary legend into gallows humor. Tommy's joked that if German snipers didn't get you, Kaiser's knife man in the thunderbox would. Engineers installed wooden arse armor, thin plates bolted under dugout latrines. A sapper's diary from Ypres notes carving Yai into each plank, partly tribute, partly talisman. In Mud and Gas, the distance between crown and commode felt razor-thin. Academia finally embraced the subject in 1952, when Professor Margaret Keane of King's College published Regis in Suro, Folklore, Fear, and the Sanitary Revolution. Her thesis, Societies Project Anxieties onto Bodily Functions, and Edmund's death offered the perfect vessel for collective shame. Critics scoffed at her privology, yet the monograph seeded a field now known as body politics. Keane traced modern restroom signage, gendered silhouettes with legs modestly crossed, to Victorian obsession with guarding vulnerable anatomy. She argued that each stall partition, each flush valve, owes a subconscious debt to the king who couldn't protect his most defenseless flank. The 1990s internet boom revived the tale in pixel form. Early message boards teemed with threads titled Worst Ways to Die, invariably citing Edmund. Conspiracy forums proposed wild variants. Some blamed a demon summoned by druid runes etched on the privy walls. Others claimed time-traveling assassins sought to destabilize Anglo-Saxon geopolitics. A viral chain email, subject line, "Check your toilet for loofahs," warned homeowners to inspect porcelain bowls with mirrors before sitting. Snopes debunked it, but not before a DIY store reported a 38% spike in sales of underseat flashlights. Then came Hollywood. A streaming-era docudrama, Iron Throne, Wooden Seat, premiered in 2023, starring a brooding Scandinavian heartthrob as Edmund and a CGI dagger leaping from depths in slow-motion 4K. Reviews panned the dialogue, but praised the visceral reminder that mortality lurks in mundane routines. Social media challenges erupted. Influencers balancing smartphones on toilet lids, reciting Edmund's last words while dumping buckets of fake blood between jump cuts. Scholars despaired. Exhibition curators cheered the uptick in museum foot traffic. And yet, for all the mockery and memes, each retelling circles back to a stubborn, almost sacred awe, the sheer unpredictability of downfall. Stand in Winchester Cathedral today, near the corner nave where a brass plaque marks Edmund's provisional tomb before his transfer to Glastonbury, and you can hear tourists lower their voices, as if laughter risks summoning the same fate. The guide's script ends with a soft-spoken reflection. Here lies a warrior undone not by sword or siege, but by the very seat he trusted. Remember this when you judge the past, or when next you seek relief. At that cue, someone always coughs, someone chuckles, and someone else stares at the floor, imagining a shadowy knife glimmering beneath stone. So the legend endures, layered like midden soil, a crust of scatological humor over strata of political caution, over bedrock of existential dread. Each age chisels its message onto Edmund's wooden epitaph, whether warning kings to vet their courtiers or urging civilians to fund sewer upgrades. The story's power is its proximity. Everyone expels, therefore everyone is vulnerable. Remove the dagger, and it's merely a bathroom mishap. Remove the throne, and it's merely a murder. Together, they form a parable no protocol can disinfect. For a millennium the question has echoed down garderobes and ceramic bowls. How will history find us when our guard is lowest? Kings learn the hard answer first, but the rest of us sit daily on the same precipice, hoping the darkness below holds nothing sharper than yesterday's regrets. Edmund's ghost, if it walks, may not haunt battlefields or royal halls at all. Perhaps it lingers wherever a lock clicks and a sigh escapes, reminding each occupant, "Remember me and check beneath." A storm front rolled off the channel and stampeded inland the night Dr. Zara Finch descended the excavation shaft beneath Winchester's High Street parking garage. A dig opened only because a corroded drainage pipe burst and geysered raw sewage into the council offices above. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. 11 centuries later, Edmund Ironside still forced the city to reckon with its underbelly. Zara's headlamp carved cones of white through dripping brick. The team had drained most of the slurry, but ammoniac tang clung to every exposed stone. Somewhere to her left a pump thudded, coughing up centuries of silt. She knelt beside an exposed oak beam, blackened by anaerobic clay, yet stubbornly intact. Samples hinted it might be part of the royal latrine block, shipped from the old palace after renovations in the 1300s, reused as foundation fill, then forgotten while asphalt and regulations piled overhead. Tonight was retrieval night. A crane winched the beam toward daylight, sludge raining from its flanks. Zara followed, boots suctioning against muck. On ground level, police sirens wailed, Winchester's Friday drunks echoing medieval dysfunction, but she heard only the beam's creak as chains settled it onto tarps. With gloved fingers she pried free a fist-sized clod. Inside glimmered a shard of iron, slender, pitted, unmistakably lethal. Gasps rippled among volunteers. "Could that be?" someone whispered. Zara's pulse hammered. She'd studied metallurgical reports on the Glastonbury dagger fragment. This shard's break angle matched like jigsaw halves long separated by fate. Rain lashed tarpaulins, drumming faster than her thoughts. If the missing midsection truly lay here, buried beneath Britain's modern sewer lines, then every relic auction, every museum label, every pilgrim prayer was incomplete. History's most infamous knife was a triptych still reuniting itself. Thunder cracked. The floodlights flickered, and for a heartbeat everything plunged into black. The smell, the cold, the weight of unspoken possibilities. When luminance returned, Zara saw something she'd missed. A faint incision in the oak, right where the beam had sat hidden for centuries. She brushed mud away, revealing an etched symbol, a wolf devouring a lamb. Eadric's crest. Her breath snagged. Was this the assassin's final confession, or some later mason's sick joke? Questions spiraled. Had Godric transported not just the blade tip but the entire weapon, broken into thirds to scatter complicity? Did medieval workmen repurpose the wood, unaware they entombed evidence beneath the city's bowels? And what did it mean that sewage mismanagement uncovered it now, another toilet forcing truth into daylight? Zara sealed the shard in an evidence tube. She felt giddy, reverent, terrified. Tomorrow tabloids would shriek, "Killer dagger found." But tonight, under slate-gray skies, she was alone with a dead king's last secret and the storm that seemed to applaud its unveiling. Lightning forked over cathedral spires, silhouetting stone saints against bruised clouds. Wind hurled rain sideways, needling her cheeks. Somewhere inside that roar, she almost heard Edmund's final grunt. Half curse, half plea, rising through time like methane from a pit. It chilled her deeper than the weather. She radioed her assistant. Seal the site. No leaks. Yet she knew leaks were inevitable. Data, gossip, sewage, they all found channels. By dawn, reporters would camp outside the cordon, eager to snapshot the plank that unseated a king. As she trudged toward the mobile lab, Zara caught her reflection in a puddle, mud-splattered, eyes incandescent with discovery, and wondered if obsession made her as vulnerable as Edmund had been. She pictured herself decades hence, archives piled around, bladder full and caution loose, sitting on some public loo while destiny readied a fresh punchline. The thought nudged a nervous laugh from her throat, swept away by gale. Inside the trailer, the air hummed with generators and caffeine. Graduate students huddled over microscopes, parsing pollen grains from latrine sludge. One looked up, face bleach white. "Dr. Finch," he stammered, "we found desiccated tapeworm eggs in the sample, massive infestation." If Edmund had similar load, the pain would have been excruciating. A sensory flash flooded her mind. A king, clenched in agony, the assassin's blade timing its thrust to a convulsion of intestinal torment. Psychological trigger, fear, fired along her nerves. Murder weapon? Yes. But the toilet itself, the writhing parasites, the failing body, they were accomplices. Rain hammered the trailer roof. Each drop sounded like a dagger tapping wood. Check beneath, check beneath. Zara's skin prickled. She'd lifted countless artifacts, spearheads, chalices, child's prayer beads, but never something that merged bodily vulnerability with political doom so viscerally. She set the evidence tube in a climate locker, keyed the lock, and exhaled. "All right," she told the room, voice steadying. "Tomorrow we reassess stratigraphy, call peer reviewers, and brace for chaos." A student raised a trembling hand. "Do we tell the council this beam came from a latrine? They might cancel the garage expansion." Laughter skittered, brittle. Zara managed a half-smile. History already canceled their expansion. They're just waiting for the memo. Across town, Winchester pubs overflowed with storm-trapped patrons. Someone strummed a guitar, adapting the age-old ballad. "Mind your throne when nature moans, for blades still lurk in royal bones." Voices joined, pints clinked, and Edmund re-entered collective consciousness yet again. Part ghost, part joke, fully immortal. Near midnight, floodlights dimmed as a transformer blew, plunging the dig into darkness. Security sensors beeped, then died. Zara glanced through rain-streaked glass. The beam lay under tarp, but the wind-worried edges loose, exposing the wolf and lamb sigil to storm glow. For a heartbeat, the carving seemed to snarl. Then the tarp snapped free, whipped skyward, and vanished over rooftops, carried off like a banner announcing that secrets buried under toilets and tarmac always, eventually rise. Zara grabbed her coat, heart pounding. She had work to do, cataloging, guarding, telling the story before tabloids mangled it. Yet as she stepped into the tempest, she felt a strange solidarity with Edmund Ironside, both custodians of fragile dignity, both at the mercy of whatever gurgled below. Another lightning strike split the clouds. The beam glistened, rainwater sluicing through knife-carved grooves, washing a millennium of grime into the gutters. Down those drains, filth would race toward the Itchen, joining runoff, memories, and maybe absolution. History flushed forward. Dawn broke like a flashbulb, strobing Winchester in paparazzi glare. By 6 a.m. the dig perimeter bristled with camera cranes, satellite vans, and umbrellas stamped with tabloid logos. Daily Dagger, Privy Times, The Sunside. Reporters shrieked questions through bullhorns. Is the killer blade cursed? While city council spokesmen shuffled talking points about heritage synergy and traffic flow contingencies. Dr. Zara Finch's phone avalanched with requests. BBC's History Extra, Time Team, a reality show called Royal Flush. Cambridge colleagues begged embargo. Grant officers begged exclusivity. Meanwhile, her grad students, high on sleepless adrenaline, debated trademarking #Ironside shards before someone else did. Inside the mobile lab, forensic metallurgist Dr. Luis Pereira had already laser scanned the fragment. Carbon steel, late 10th to early 11th century, he announced, projecting a 3D model that rotated like a jagged comet. Microstriae matched the Glastonbury tip, with 95.8% probability, enough to turn Zara's knees to water. She imagined all three pieces reunited under museum glass. Handle midsection, wicked point. a single instrument that once threaded flesh, rumor, and destiny in one upward stab. By mid-morning the county coroner arrived, summoned by local police who considered the beam a potential crime scene. Never mind the suspect had moldered for 1,000 years. Regulations required a sealed evidence chain. Regulations had no checkbox for regicide via toilet. Zara surrendered the shard with a trembling signature, knowing it might vanish into bureaucratic limbo. For the first time she felt sympathy for Edmund's widow, watching proof slip from grasp into the churning gears of power. That night Winchester Guildhall hosted an emergency council meeting. Taxpayers fumed that the garage project was now archaeologically compromised. One business owner complained, "Can't we shove the plank in a museum and pour concrete?" An elderly librarian countered, "We pave our past at peril. Remember old Ern's Lane, lost to Tesco's forever." Debate seesawed until Zara, still mud-streaked, stepped to the lectern. She spoke of Edmund, not as meme but as man. He fought invaders, negotiated peace, suffered parasites, and yes, died absurdly. But that absurdity forces us to confront our shared fragility. His story is sewage and sovereignty entwined. If that makes us uncomfortable, good. Archaeology isn't a comfort industry, it's a truth service. Her words, raw and quavering, somehow settled the room. The council voted to convert the dig into an open-air exhibit, multi-story garage be damned. Applause rippled like timid rain. Outside, street lamps flickered on, and Zara finally exhaled. She realized the same humility Edmund had learned too late, now tugged at her own hubris. No discovery, however spectacular, belonged solely to the discoverer. Like waste through pipes, history ran communal. Weeks passed. Conservators stabilized the oak beam in a glycerol bath, revealing woodworking tool marks that matched 11th century royal carpentry. Zara published preliminary findings in antiquity, co-authoring with specialists from Oslo and MIT. The paper stressed that the shard's context, privy wood-turned foundation timber, demonstrated medieval England's culture of material recycling. Twitter headlines preferred toilet of doom found in car park. Security proved a nightmare. A TikTok prankster infiltrated the site at midnight, filming himself sitting on a replica seat and yelling, "Come at me bro Lufa!" The video racked 2 million views before Hampshire police tackled him into a puddle of silt. Insurance premiums skyrocketed. The council installed motion-sensing lights that bathed the dig in eerie blue. Locals dubbed it the Ghost Loo. Yet the public hunger felt, oddly, like reverence too. Schoolchildren mailed Zara crayon drawings, brave little kings inspecting toilets with flashlights. A hospice patient sent a letter. "Thank you for proving dignity is optional, but courage is not." Even the Archbishop of Canterbury referenced Edmund in an Easter homily. From lowest places God can raise lessons higher than any throne. The reunion ceremony came the following spring inside Winchester Cathedral's nave, where floodlight shafts dusted ancient stone with lumen silk. Conservators laid out the 3 dagger fragments on purple velvet. Choirs hummed plainsong. TV anchors whispered dramatic superlatives. Zara, in nitrile gloves, guided the final placement, tip to midsection to hilt. Magnets clicked lightly, bridging millennial fracture. Gasps fluttered through pews as if the choir had hit a forbidden note. The dean intoned, "May learning heal what vengeance broke." A hush settled so deep Zara heard her pulse talking to the vaulted ceiling. She thought of Lufa's goose-grease claustrophobia, of Eadric's silver-lined treason, of Edmund's last bewildered heartbeat, and of every visitor who would stand before this glass case, cheeks warming with the visceral knowledge that shame, pain, and mortality democratize kings and commoners alike. Afterwards, media swarmed. Funders pledged millions for the new Edmund Ironside Center for Public Archaeology. Wine flowed. But Zara slipped away down a side aisle and found the modest brass plaque marking Edmund's provisional tomb. She knelt, not religiously but gratefully, and placed on the marble a small modern object, a compact folding mirror. It was the same model hikers used to check for snakes under logs, or pranksters under portaloos. A silent offering to vigilance. Thunder rumbled distant, gentle this time. Rain tapped the stained glass in delicate Morse. Check beneath, check beneath. Zara smiled. She would, and so would countless others now. Months later, when the visitor center opened, the first exhibit encountered after the ticket desk wasn't the dagger or the beam. It was a simple wooden toilet seat suspended at eye level. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Sit with care. History is listening." Guests laughed, posed, pondered. Some walked on shaking heads. A few wiped silent tears. All left reminded that thresholds between tragedy and farce are as thin as cedar slats, and that a millennium's worth of toilets, tunnels, and truths can't mute one enduring message. Dignity is brittle, awareness is armor. And somewhere, perhaps chuckling through the centuries, King Edmund Ironside stands guard at every threshold where flesh meets fragility, urging each passerby to face the abyss below, blade or no blade, with eyes open wide.